talking about the first way to implement polymorphism in Java, and we talked about the concept of method overloading. So after some time, you realize that in this program, you don't know, for example, how many arguments would be passed to this add numbers. Sometimes it would be 2, 3, 4, or let's say the user wants to add 15 numbers. So would you go on and create 15 different methods for that? All right, overloading gives you the concept of the flexibility of naming all those 15 methods the same, that is add numbers. But still, after some time, you realize you are working like a donkey. You don't want to do that, right? And with no disrespect to our good friend donkey here, guys, because the poor animal does its job very well. But coming back to what we're discussing, we don't want to write repetitive code here, right? After some time, you just realize that this is redundant because you're doing the same job and you're creating n number of methods, and even those are not sufficient, because let's say the user now wants to add in 25 numbers, but you just have created 15 versions of this method. And that is when there was a feature introduced in Java 5.0 again, and that was called the concept of variable arguments to a method. In short, we call it Var Args, right? So what I'll do is I'll just create a new class for you quickly, and I'll just call it Var Arg demo. V capital following camel case, and I'll have the main method, guys. So again, I have the same requirement. I want to add numbers. I'll say class calculate add again, or let's just call it, let's just call it in short calculate, and then have the method void add, but I'm not sure how many arguments would be passed to it. That is, dynamically, the user might have a requirement of adding 2 numbers. He or she might have a requirement of adding 7 numbers or 17 numbers as well. But I want this method to be catering to all those scenarios, to all those requirements. What would you do? Before Java 5.0, you had no way to do that. But after Java 5.0, you have a way. And that concept is, guys, called Var Args, short for variable arguments, introduced in Java 5.0. It just works within parameters to a method, within arguments to a method. That's why we call it variable arguments, Var Args. And what is the syntax to write it? You say type, the same way you declare a variable as a parameter to a method, that is identifier, but the only change is you put in 3 dots with that. That was a change in the syntax starting with Java 5.0. Right, type 3 dots identifier, guys. And what does it now do? See, if you had it like this, you know this add method, when it would be called, it just takes exactly 1 argument of that type. But when you put in 3 dots, it becomes a var arg parameter. And what does it mean? When add would be called, it can now take from 0 to n number of arguments. Such a flexibility was added to methods after Java 5. And that is now this method can even take 0 arguments. It can even take 5. It can even take 50. It can even take 75 arguments, right? Almost magically. And given, let's put it to practice. That is for our current requirement. That is when I'm not sure how many would be required to add. So I'll just declare it like this. I'll say int 3 dots, and then I'll say, for example, the name as values, right? Now this takes from 0 to n number of integer arguments, guys. That's the great flexibility I'm talking about, right? And now let's just call it, I'll say new calculate dot add, and see, even this works, guys. Even this works. What does it say? Sorry, I have to close this. Yeah, see, there's no error. I said even this works, right, guys, because it can take from 0 to n number of arguments. But I'll say new calculate, and I want to add in 2 numbers, for example. So you'll say dot add, and then pass in the 2 numbers. I'll say 45 1 2 4 1 2 3 4. Even this works. See, there's no error, guys. 0 to n number of integer arguments now. The great flexibility we're talking about. And now you might be wondering, how would we add here? Because in the previous example, we knew that if we had 2 numbers to be added, we just called it with 2 parameters. If 3, the 3 one, if 4, the 4 one. But here, How does it add? How does it cater to every scenario? For that, you have to write your logic. Let me just do it quickly for you. I'll declare a variable here. I'll say int total, instantiate to a default value, and then I'll just say I'll use the enhanced for loop. So now I'm using two new features which were introduced in Java 5, that is variable arguments and enhanced for loop with each other. So I'll say for int value and then values. So I told you we can only use the enhanced for loop with an array or a collection, but can you use it with a variable argument parameter? Turns out yes. Why? Because behind the scenes, variable argument parameters act like arrays. Behind the scenes, they work like arrays, and that's why I'm able to use it. And then what I'll do is I'll just define my logic. I'll say total composite operator plus equal to and then value, whatever is in that array. And after the addition is done, I can just print it out after the loop. I can say addition of the numbers is, you can just print total on your screen. No matter how many numbers you pass in, this caters to all. This is a fit all scenario. This is a take all scenario, guys. And see, I'm just passing in two numbers. Let's see if it works for this or not. Say we run this. Absolutely does. 45 plus 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you had passed in this time, let's say 4 numbers, a take all scenario, right? A fit all scenario. It caters to every scenario, guys. Now you end up writing drastically reduced code, because see, even these 3 methods, and even if you wrote 30 methods with overloading, that was not going to be sufficient. It was not going to suffice, right? But this suffices all scenarios, all requirements, and you reduce the code, drastically reduced codes. And now this code looks so much verbose, right? But this looks so much succinct, so much precise and intelligent as well. And the rule of variable arguments, you have to remember the rules of variable arguments is you can only put them inside arguments to a method. The second rule is a method can have only one var arg parameter, and it should be the last. That is, you cannot have it like this. That's an error, because as I said, a method can have only one var arg parameter, right? And it should be the last. If you have it like this, again an error, right? But it can be like this, for example. And this method here now add how many arguments would we require it to be passed, and that is at least 1, and then 0 to n. This works. But for now, I'll just keep it to this and run this, and your problem is solved, guys. A take all scenario. It was a great addition to the language in Java 5. I'll see you in the next video.